So recently I've been trying to complete some of the older games in my backlog. So far this year I've completed Uncharted 3 and 4, Call of Duty World War 2 and now Battlefield 1's campaign. After playing Battlefield 1 and trying to grab some of the campaign based achievements, I decided to check out how many people have actually completed the campaign. Using the Xbox One's built-in rarity checker, where it tells you what percentage of people have completed the campaign on normal difficulty, I found that only 9.52% people had actually completed the campaign on normal. Now unfortunately there isn't an achievement for completing the game on easy difficulty, so it probably is slightly higher than 9%, but that's still incredibly low. To double check these figures, I ran a poll on YouTube and asked how many people had actually completed the campaign, and it ended up with more people having not completed it than have, but it was actually surprisingly quite close. Now despite how I sound, I'm not stupid. I know the majority of people don't buy Battlefield 1 for the campaign, but I really feel like it deserves more attention. The campaign structure may play a small part in that low figure. It's not structured in the way that many FPS campaigns are. Instead they're broken up into war stories. Each of the game's war stories tells you about a certain conflict that happened during World War I. This means that the game can hop between locations and more importantly switch up gameplay. Not only this, but you can take on any of the war stories in any order that you like. So if a certain story doesn't appeal to you, you can ignore it altogether. When playing through certain levels, it was very clear to me that these levels were designed as tutorials for the multiplayer. Of course, the levels were very well designed and graphically they looked amazing, as does all of Battlefield 1, but it was obvious what the developers had in mind when structuring these missions. For example, I now consider myself a pretty decent Battlefield 1 player, but I've always struggled with vehicles. The campaign has a war story where you take on the role of a British tank driver. During this campaign you take control of the tank, handle some on-foot combat and are also charged with repairing the tank itself. After finishing that particular story, I can now handle myself online with a tank. There's also a plane section where you take on the role of a dishonest American pilot. During this campaign you have to bomb ground targets, avoid bogeys that may be on your tail and participate in dogfights. Unfortunately I'm still a shit pilot. I'm not saying if you played the campaign you'll suddenly be an invincible war machine, John Wicking across the battlefield popping heads left, right and centre, and the chances are that a lot of you watching this video are already very capable Battlefield 1 players, but for anyone new getting into the game and struggling, the campaign is a great place to learn the ropes. Obviously that's not the only reason to play the campaign. I find that, despite the game having its over-the-top super soldier moments, they are very few and far between. It handles World War I with great respect. Before each story you're giving a very brief backstory into the conflict you're taking part in, and at the end it's explained to you what the outcome of your actions were. To drive home the reality of war, the very first level in the campaign expects you to die. Once your soldier dies, you are then teleported into another soldier's body to continue the fight.
We came from all over the world, so many of us thinking this war would be our rite of passage, our great adventure. Let me tell you, it was no adventure.
I say teleported using inverted commas, obviously it's World War I, there's no teleportation. But I love this. In almost every other game when you die, the game stops and refuses to carry on as you are so vital to complete whatever the mission may be. When you die in Battlefield 1, you're just another dead soldier. Over 16 million people died during World War I, a staggering loss of human lives, and Battlefield 1 handles what is still a very sensitive subject with a great deal of class. There are several poignant moments in the campaign which portray the brutality and gore of World War I. During one section, and beware I'm about to spoil a part of the tank campaign here, so if you don't want to have that section ruined, skip until the timestamp in the bottom left. Right, if you're still here I'll carry on. During the tank campaign you find yourself trapped in your tank and about to be overrun and forced to call in artillery on your position. To communicate this to your allies you use a carrier pigeon. In something that I didn't see coming, you actually take control of the pigeon and fly back to the base as the war rages on around you. It's a fantastic moment of tranquility in a time of great loss.
The pigeon! That is an order, son! Do you understand me? Sir!
Overall, Battlefield 1's campaign is a joy to play. Some of the sections drag on for a bit. Now I know I said I learnt a lot from the tank section, but but it did get boring towards the end. But the Lawrence of Arabia sections and the Italian army story where you start off in armour are awesome. If you have a spare 7 to 8 hours, I highly recommend playing through Battlefield 1's campaign. Even if you skip some of the other war stories that you may find boring, at least experience 2 or 3 of them to understand what it must have been like to take part in such a conflict. It might not be as addictive as the game's multiplayer, but it's definitely worth experiencing at least once. If you enjoyed this video, then a like is really appreciated. Let me know if you've played the campaign and what you thought of it, and I'll speak to you all very, very soon.